Is anyone else very curious about the mysterious footman that has been helping Eloise? Who is this guy? I think he's captured a lot of our attention, so I wanted to break down what we know, what we don't know, and why I think he could be a valuable asset to the show. But first, for context, a footman is a male servant. He's typically beneath the butler. The footman's responsibilities normally included running alongside the carriages, performing duties such as laying and waiting tables, opening and closing doors, and running errands. In earlier centuries, footmen were highly prized for good looks and good stature. It was very important for them to look good, especially in front of the visitors. So now, this gives us a bit of an explanation as to why the footman is such a looker. And the show gives the footman a name. His name is John. He's played by Oli Higginson, who is quite a talented actor and singer. We first meet Footman John in Season 1, Episode 1. He is supposedly in the background when the Duke comes to the Bridgerton house for dinner. We can't quite catch his face because he's in a sea of other footmen, but we do get a glimpse of him later on when he announces the entry of Lord Berbrook when Lord Berbrook calls on Daphne. And in that scene, when Footman John comes in, Eloise straightens up and she has a bit of a smile on her face.
That's suspicious.
We then don't see Footman John until the season finale, so episode 8. In episode 8, Eloise offers her pin money to Footman John so that he can take her to warn Lady Whistledown. For those who are curious, pin money is a sum allotted to a woman for clothing and other personal expenses. It was especially given to a wife as an allowance for private expenditure. Something that I found very interesting is that since the days of the suffragists, this phrase has been used in a belittling way to demean the wages of working women. During this time, women who worked were accused of taking jobs away from men and lowering wages. In 1929, Britain's Minister for Employment, J.H. Thomas, gave a speech where he said, "It is not only uneconomic and unfair, but against the nation's interest for women to work for what they call pin money and deprive other people of legitimate work." Now, back to the show. When Eloise offers her pin money to John, he has this very playful, mischievous smile on his face. Later on, as they are waiting for Lady Whistledown, he says, "We really must get back to the party." So it does appear that he has a sense of duty and a responsibility to protect Eloise. We meet Footman John again in episode 2 of season 2. This is where he brings Eloise to the printer shop where Lady Whistledown prints her column. Footman John tells Eloise that it's not safe for her to be there given her position, and she resists. She gives him the rest of her pin money and she walks out. She then runs into Theo and then of course demands that Theo tell her where Lady Whistledown is because she knows that that's where she prints her column. This is quite cute. John asks, we know, and Eloise retorts to Footman John saying, "Why did you think we were here?" As Eloise teases Theo, Footman John has a smile on his face and we get a direct shot of him with an amused expression. It kind of gives an impression that he kind of knows Eloise. There's a sense that he is aware of her personality, and it's possible that he's already been working for the Bridgertons for a while, so he's got a feel for Eloise's rebellious nature, her opinions, and it looks like he knows her well enough to at least accompany her and to not ask too many questions about what she's doing. There seems to be some sort of sense of trust between the two. In episode 5 of season 2, Footman John is replaced by a maid, so when Eloise decides to go to a meeting for human rights, Eloise runs away from the maid, but I think if it was Footman John, he would have probably come with her. I kind of see him as the type of character who would have understood what she was doing because we've seen him do that in the past. Finally, in episode 8, so the season 2 finale, Footman John arrives and he gives a package to Eloise from Theo. Eloise says that she doesn't want anything, and Footman John, with his traditional smile, says, "You might want this one." He seems to be very encouraging and supportive of her. He seems to understand her and her pursuit of Lady Whistledown. I have to wonder if in that particular scene he also might have felt a sense of guilt, because at this point, Eloise's reputation has already been damaged, and he knows that he is, at the very least, an accomplice in what she has done. He also tells her in that scene in episode 8 that he'll be waiting outside, so not only is he giving her the package, but he wants to support her in what she's doing. So that is all that we know about Footman John, and what we don't know is a lot. What we would love to know, or at the very least what I would love to know, is where does he come from? And most importantly, how long has he been working for the Bridgertons? As a footman, he's supposed to be a jack of all trades. He serves the family at every meal, he runs alongside the carriages, he has to be dressed in opulent clothing. In some scenarios, a footman is responsible for being trained in arms, so he's supposed to be a bodyguard for the family. It's not a very easy job, and I can imagine that someone who works as a footman develops a closer understanding of the family that he's working for because he is supposed to be there all the time. This gives us a bit of an outside perspective into this particular family. Something that I think is intriguing about this particular individual is how he sees this world. I would love to have an episode where it is shown through his eyes, so an entire episode where we get to see the family, but coming from the servers, coming from his point of view. He sees all the drama, he sees all the pain that the family experiences experiences, but at the same time, we would get a look into what he experiences every day. And I think it would be a great flip of the narrative for this particular story. A developing friendship between Eloise and John would allow for her personal growth. Yes, her crush on Theo gave her a little bit of an insight into the working class, but a real relationship, and not necessarily a romantic relationship, but at the very least a friendship with John, would give Eloise more of a perspective of what it's like for servants who work for the elite. These servants, they live among the noble, so they have an understanding of what it's like to be wealthy, but they're never part of it. And this relationship between Eloise and John will give Eloise a real look, a real understanding and appreciation of the servants, to see them as equals, and to understand the artificial divide between the upper and lower classes. I have to wonder if perhaps Footman John is not resisting Eloise's adventures because he sees her potential to understand that the society that they live in is unfair. And I really hope that he really gets to develop his character, or at the very least, that we get a little bit of an insight into what he experiences, what the servants experience, and how they view this particular world.